Hey everyone, and welcome back for another Paranormal Pit Stop. Tonight, we'll be exploring a historic church turned educational venue that's located off North Main Street in Providence, Rhode Island, and its museum and reconciliation center are expected to be the first museum in the whole of the United States to focus on the history of slavery in the region. Recognized as one of the oldest Gothic Revival style churches in the whole of New England, and rumored to harbor a range of restless spirits and ghostly manifestations, are you prepared to brave the history and hauntings of the Cathedral of St. John? Historically, a parish from which our current cathedral was formed was originally organized in 1722 as King's Church in honor of King George I, and its first church building, which was constructed of wood and was documented as standing 62 feet in length, 41 in width, and 26 in height, would be erected later the same year on lands donated by shipbuilder Nathaniel Brown. In 1771, a pointed steeple was added to the front of this church structure. In 1772, an organ was installed, and in 1794, following an American victory through the Revolution, the parish would re-establish itself as St. John's Church. In 1790, the Episcopal Diocese of Rhode Island was formed, and the earlier St. John's Church building would serve Providence until 1810, when work was started on our current cathedral, which was formally dedicated the following year in 1811. In 1856, a chapel, now acting as a library, was designed under Richard Upjohn. In 1866, the south transept was constructed by Clifton A. Hall and was later renovated at the turn of the century. And in 1905, the site's interiors were remodeled by Cram, Goodhue, and Ferguson. In 1909, a cathedral corporation was formed. In 1929, the site was designated and honored as Episcopal seat, with its name being altered to the Cathedral of St. John. And in 1967, the aged building would undergo extensive renovations. Sadly, over the years, the cathedral would deteriorate a great deal, and has even been featured time and time again on the Providence Preservation Society's 10 most endangered properties list. Also in 67, the diocesan offices were erected adjacent to the church, and in 1972, several renovations were performed. In 2012, the Cathedral of St. John would close its doors under a waning community and waxing repair bills, and currently, it's in the process of being transformed into an exhibition and reconciliation center, which will focus on the history of the transatlantic slave trade, as well as the state's and church's roles in said atrocities. While the cathedral was partially reopened in 2018, the expanse is in need of significant repairs, and multiple efforts are currently underway for its betterment and preservation. Chillingly, the Cathedral of St. John has long been surrounded in stories of paranormal activity and ghostly encounters, and across the site, over the years, parishioners, staff, and visitors have reported orbs and strange silhouettes in photography, abnormal battery death rates, and the constant feelings of being followed or watched. A range of shipbuilders, captains, traders, financiers, and the like were of the Episcopalian faith, and together their church would support slavery openly while reaping profits from the heinous act. One James DeWolf Perry III, who actually acted as Bishop of Rhode Island for a time, as well as of the church through the 20th century, was so ingrained in this lifestyle that his family was actually recognized as one of the most prolific slaving families in U.S. history. Not surprisingly, many of African descent, especially those more sensitive to the supernatural, have described feeling incredibly uncomfortable across the whole of cathedral grounds, and several have even told of encounters with a dark, ominous presence that seemingly follows them about the property. When the cathedral was reconstructed in 1810, an older burial plot was moved, its headstones hauled off, and there has since been some debate as to whether all remains present were actually transferred with their markers, or if some were maybe left behind, as several have told of run-ins with full-bodied entities in old-fashioned attire, who materialize at random within the more modern place of worship, seemingly searching confusedly for their original grave sites. Additionally, the graveyard now hosted on cathedral grounds is thought to be a hotspot for activity, and those who have braved it have reported objects sighted moving on their own, strange lights spied floating over headstones, and odd scratching noises heard early in the mornings, seemingly emanating from burial plots, while others have described unnatural cold spots, disembodied voices and footsteps, and encounters with both shadowy figures and full-bodied apparitions. On some closing notes, through the 1840s, legendary horror writer Edgar Allan Poe resided in Providence, and for a time courted Sarah Helen Whitman, who lived directly behind the cemetery. Although she would eventually break things off, and Poe would go on to pursue other love interests. To date, several reports tell of encounters with an entity bearing his likeness, always spied throwing small pebbles at the windows of Sarah's old house. Later still, prolific horror writer H.P. Lovecraft would grace these same cemetery grounds while writing various works, and would report experiencing strange happenings throughout his stay. Thanks for joining us on this Paranormal Pit Stop. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We'll catch you next time.